Have you ever felt tired, not because your body was weak, but because your mind never stopped speaking? Have you ever slept through the night, opened your eyes in the morning, and still felt like you had been fighting a war inside your head? Have you ever been surrounded by people, yet deep in your heart, you still felt alone? You smile, you work, you answer messages, you do what life asks you to do. But somewhere inside, there is a quiet noise that never seems to disappear. You think about yesterday, you worry about tomorrow, you wonder if you are falling behind. You ask yourself why other people seem happier, richer, stronger, and more certain about life. And slowly, without noticing it, you stop living in the present moment. Your body is here, but your mind is somewhere else. Your hands are working, but your heart is tired. Your life keeps moving, but your peace keeps disappearing. Many people believe peace will come later, after they earn more money, after they become successful, after people respect them, after they fix every problem, after life finally becomes perfect. But look around carefully. Some people have everything and still cannot sleep. Some people are praised by the world and still feel empty when they are alone. Some people live inside beautiful houses, but their minds feel like dark rooms with no windows. So maybe peace is not something you find after getting everything. Maybe peace is something you lose while chasing everything. Stay with this story until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you handle every storm in your life. This is the story of a young man named Elias, a man who searched for peace in the outside world, until an old traveler showed him that the place he feared to look was the very place where peace had been waiting. Long ago, in a small village surrounded by green hills, quiet rivers, and deep forests, there lived a young man named Elias. Everyone knew him as a good man. He was honest, he was kind, he was hardworking. Before the sun rose, Elias was already awake. While others were still sleeping, he washed his face with cold water, picked up his tools, and stepped into the morning air. He repaired broken fences, he carried heavy sacks for merchants, he helped farmers move baskets of grain, he brought water for the elderly. If someone needed help, Elias was usually the first person to arrive. People respected him. They said, "Elias works harder than anyone." They said, "One day, life will reward him." But they did not know the real reason Elias worked so hard. Years earlier, when Elias was still a boy, his father had looked at him after a failed harvest and said, "A man who has nothing must become useful, or the world will forget him." His father did not say it with cruelty, he said it from pain. But the words entered Elias like a seed, and as Elias grew older, that seed became a voice. Be useful, do more, earn more, become someone, or you will be forgotten. So Elias worked. He worked until his hands became rough. He worked until his back ached. He worked until people praised him. But praise did not silence the voice. While he worked, he compared himself with men who had more money. While he ate, he worried about tomorrow. While he laughed with friends, something inside him whispered, "Is this all your life will ever be?" At night, when the village became silent, Elias lay awake on his small wooden bed and stared at the ceiling. His body was exhausted, but his mind kept running. He thought about old mistakes. He thought about people who had become richer than him. He thought about the future he wanted, but did not know how to reach. Sometimes, he imagined owning a bigger house. He imagined wearing fine clothes. He imagined walking through the village while people looked at him with admiration. He believed that if he could become successful enough, then the emptiness inside him would finally disappear. But every morning, he woke up with the same heavy feeling, the same worry, the same invisible pressure, the same question sitting quietly in his heart. Why am I doing so much, but still feeling so little peace? One evening, after another long day of work, Elias sat outside his house and watched the village lights in the distance. Families were eating together. Children were laughing. Someone was playing soft music near the road. Everything around him seemed alive. But inside, Elias felt far away from life, not because he was alone, but because he had become a stranger to himself. And he did not know that the answer to his pain would come the next morning, from an old man sitting beside a well. The next morning, Elias walked through the village market. The market was full of noise. Merchants shouted prices. Women carried baskets of vegetables. Children ran between carts of fruit. Everyone seemed to be moving, buying, selling, searching, and rushing. Then Elias saw him. Beside the old stone well sat an old traveler. His clothes were faded. His sandals were worn. His walking stick looked like it had been made from a dry branch. Beside him was only one small cloth bag. He looked like a man who owned almost nothing, but his face was different. Calm, clear, peaceful. Not the peace of someone who had never suffered. It was the peace of someone who had suffered deeply and had stopped letting pain own him. People greeted him with respect. Children smiled at him without fear. Even a few birds landed near the well and stayed close to him, as if they trusted his silence. Elias stopped walking. Something about the old man awakened a question inside him. How can a man with so little look more peaceful than people who have so much? Finally, Elias walked closer. "Sir," he asked politely, "may I ask you something?" The old man looked up and smiled. "Of course." Elias hesitated, then said, "Why do you look happier than everyone else? You own almost nothing." The old man looked at the busy market. Then he looked back at Elias. "I became peaceful," he said, "when I stopped counting what I own and started noticing what owns me." Elias frowned. "I do not understand." The old man pointed toward the crowd. "What do you see?" Elias answered, "I see people buying food, clothes, tools, and animals." The old man nodded slowly. "And I see people buying things they hope will silence the noise inside their minds." Elias became quiet. Because the old man had just described a pain Elias had never spoken aloud. Then the old man stood up, picked up his walking stick and said, "If you truly want peace of mind, meet me tomorrow before sunrise near the old oak tree outside the village." Elias quickly asked, "What will you teach me?" The old man began walking away. Without turning back, he said, "First, I will teach you how to hear yourself." That night, Elias could not stop thinking about those words. How to hear yourself. He had spent years trying to be seen by others, but he had never learned how to listen to himself. Before sunrise, Elias walked toward the old oak tree. The air was cold. The grass was wet beneath his feet. A thin line of light was beginning to touch the hills. The old man was already there. He did not greet Elias with a long speech. He simply turned and began walking toward the forest. Elias followed. At first, he expected the old man to explain something. Maybe a secret rule, maybe a prayer, maybe a powerful method that peaceful people use to control their thoughts. But the old man said nothing. They walked under tall trees. Birds moved between branches. Leaves whispered in the morning wind. Sunlight slowly entered the forest, falling in thin golden lines across the path. Still, the old man said nothing. After 1 hour, Elias became uncomfortable. After 2 hours, he became impatient. Finally, he stopped walking. "Sir," Elias said, "I thought you were going to teach me something." The old man smiled. "I already am." Elias frowned. "But we have not talked." The old man stopped beside a quiet river and sat on a large stone. "Exactly," he said. Elias sat beside him, confused and slightly angry. The old man looked at the flowing water and asked, "When was the last time you spent 1 hour without trying to fix your life?" Elias opened his mouth, but no answer came. The old man continued, "Your body walked through the forest, but your mind was not here. Your mind was still running through yesterday and tomorrow." Elias lowered his head. It was true. During the entire walk, he had not truly seen the trees. He had not listened to the birds. He had not felt the cool air on his skin. He had been thinking about unfinished work, unpaid bills, old mistakes, and people who seemed more successful than him. The old man picked up a dry leaf and dropped it into the river. "Watch," he said. The leaf floated gently on the water. It did not fight the river. It did not try to move faster. It did not complain when the current turned. It simply followed the flow. "What do you learn?" the old man asked. Elias watched the leaf disappear around a bend. "It is only a leaf," he said softly. The old man smiled. The leaf reaches places because it knows when to stop fighting the current. Elias looked at the river for a long time. Something inside him became quiet. Not completely, not forever, but for a few seconds, the noise stopped. And in those few seconds, Elias realized something painful. The forest had been peaceful from the beginning. The river had been peaceful from the beginning. The morning had been peaceful from the beginning. Only his mind had refused to arrive. For the next several mornings, Elias returned to the forest. Each time, he expected the old man to give him a great secret. But the old man never taught in the way Elias expected. He did not speak like a scholar. He did not give difficult ideas. He did not ask Elias to remember long lessons. Instead, he showed him simple things: a leaf, a river, a silent walk, a question. One morning, the old man handed Elias a clay cup filled to the very top with water. The water was so full that even a small movement could make it spill. "Carry this cup to the top of that hill," the old man said, "but do not spill a single drop." Elias took the cup carefully with both hands. The path to the hill was narrow. Small stones covered the ground. Tree roots crossed the way. Flowers grew on both sides of the path. Birds moved above him, singing in the morning light. But Elias noticed none of it. His eyes stayed fixed on the cup. Every step was slow. Every breath was careful. Every movement was controlled. When he finally reached the top of the hill, not one drop had fallen. The old man was waiting there. He asked, "What flowers did you see?" Elias blinked. "I saw none." "What birds did you hear?" "I heard none." "What did the morning air feel like?" Elias looked down at the cup. "I did not notice." The old man nodded gently. "You protected the water," he said, "but you lost the journey." Then he took the cup from Elias and poured half of the water onto the ground. "Now walk back." This time, Elias held the cup with one hand. He still walked carefully, but something was different. He was no longer afraid of every small movement. His eyes were no longer trapped inside the cup. He saw yellow flowers beside the path. He heard birds singing in the trees. He felt the cool morning air touch his face. He noticed sunlight falling through the leaves. When Elias returned, the old man asked, "Did you arrive safely?" "Yes." "Did you spill the water?" "But no." The old man smiled. "Then remember this, Elias. A mind filled to the top with worry leaves no space for life." Elias became silent. For years, he had been carrying his life like that full cup. So carefully, so fearfully, so tightly. He had tried to protect himself from failure, shame, loss, and disappointment. But while protecting himself from pain, he had also protected himself from joy. He had passed through beautiful mornings without seeing them. He had sat with friends without feeling their presence. He had lived many days without truly entering them. And for the first time, Elias realized that peace was not only about removing problems. Sometimes peace begins when you stop filling your mind with fears that have not even happened. A few days later, the old man asked Elias to walk with him to a nearby village. The road was long and dry. On one side, there were fields of wheat moving gently in the wind. On the other side, tall trees cast shadows across the path. Then they saw a poor woodcutter coming toward them. The man was carrying heavy logs on his back. His clothes were torn. His shoes were old and covered with dust. Sweat rolled down his face, and his shoulders bent under the weight of the wood. But he was singing. His voice was rough and simple, but there was something real in it, something light, something alive. When he saw the old man, he smiled warmly. "Good morning," the woodcutter said. "The sun is strong today, but at least it means my clothes will dry quickly." Then he laughed and continued walking. A short time later, they heard the sound of a horse. A wealthy merchant appeared, riding a beautiful animal with a shining saddle. His clothes were made from fine cloth. Rings covered his fingers. Behind him, 2 servants carried heavy boxes. From the outside, the merchant looked powerful, but his face was angry. He shouted at one servant for walking too slowly. Then he shouted at the other for holding a box the wrong way. He complained about the road, the weather, the heat, and even the dust beneath the horse's feet. When the merchant passed, the old man looked at Elias and asked, "Who is richer?" Elias answered quickly. "The merchant, of course." The old man shook his head. "No, Elias. One owns gold but serves fear. The other owns little but serves gratitude." Elias looked back toward the road. The old man continued. "Many people think wealth means having more money, more land, more respect, more power. But real wealth begins when your heart does not need so much from the world to feel complete." That evening, they rested beside a small fire. Elias finally asked, "If peace of mind is so simple, why do most people lose it?" The old man looked into the fire for a long moment. Then he said, "Because people protect everything except the one thing that creates every decision." Elias leaned closer. "What is that?" "Their own mind." Then Elias asked something he had been afraid to ask. "Were you always this peaceful?" The old man did not answer immediately. For the first time, sadness passed across his face. "No," he said. "When I was young, I was a merchant. I had houses, servants, horses, and more gold than I needed. People bowed when I passed. They praised my name in the market. They called me fortunate." He looked into the fire. "But every night, I locked my doors and still felt unsafe. I counted my gold again and again, afraid someone would take it. I trusted no friend completely. I slept with fear. I woke with anger. I spent my life protecting what I owned, until I realized my possessions were not serving me. I was serving them." Elias listened without moving. "One year," the old man continued, "a fire took almost everything from me. At first, I screamed like a man who had lost his soul. But later, when the smoke cleared, I understood something strange. The fire had taken my house, my gold, and my pride. But it had also taken the cage I had been living in." The fire cracked softly. The old man looked at Elias. "People protect their money. They protect their houses. They protect their reputation. They protect their pride. But they allow every fear, every insult, every comparison, and every memory to enter their mind and control their heart." Elias did not answer. Because he knew the old man was not only speaking about the past, he was speaking about him. The next morning, the old man gave Elias a small cloth bag. Inside the bag were smooth stones from the river. "Carry this with you today," the old man said. Elias lifted the bag. It was not very heavy. "That is all?" he asked. The old man smiled. "That is all." So Elias carried the bag. In the morning, it felt easy. He helped a farmer repair a fence, carried vegetables, and brought water from the well for an elderly woman. The bag hung from his shoulder the entire time. At first, Elias barely noticed it. But as the sun climbed higher, the bag became harder to ignore. His shoulder began to ache. His back became tight. His steps became slower. By sunset, Elias was exhausted. He placed the bag on the ground and rubbed his shoulder. The old man looked at him and asked, "Is the bag heavier than it was this morning?" Elias frowned. "No, the stones are the same." "Then why are you more tired?" "Because I have carried it all day." The old man nodded. "Exactly." Then he pointed to the stones. "Problems are often like this bag. At first, they may not destroy you, but when you carry them all day, every day, without rest, even small burdens can break your spirit." Elias slowly opened the bag and poured the stones onto the ground. The old man continued, "Most people carry yesterday's anger, today's stress, and tomorrow's fear at the same time. Then they wonder why life feels so heavy." Those words entered Elias deeply. He thought about his father's sentence. A man who has nothing must become useful, or the world will forget him. He had carried those words for years. He had worked for years, not only to survive, but to prove that he deserved to exist. And suddenly, he understood something that made his eyes burn. Some burdens are not placed on your shoulders by life. Some burdens are placed there by words you never questioned. That evening, Elias sat alone beside the river. For the first time in many years, he did not try to fix his whole life. He did not ask why others had more. He did not ask whether tomorrow would be kind to him. He simply watched the water flow. And in that quiet moment, he felt something strange. Not excitement, not victory, not success. Peace. A small peace, but real. For a few days, Elias believed he had finally understood, but it is easy to feel peaceful beside a quiet river. It is easy to speak about wisdom when the sky is clear. Life does not test your peace in silence. It tests your peace when everything you fear comes knocking at your door. 1 week later, Elias returned to his village after helping a farmer outside the hills. As he came closer to his home, he saw people standing near the road. Their faces were serious. Some were carrying broken wood. Others were pulling branches away from damaged roofs. A violent storm had passed through the village during the night. Elias hurried to his house. When he arrived, his heart dropped. Part of his roof had collapsed. Mud covered the floor. Several of his tools were broken. The little money he had saved for months had been washed away by floodwater. For a moment, the old Elias returned. Fear entered his mind. Then anger followed. Why me? Why now? How will I survive? What if I never recover from this? And under those questions, another old voice rose. If you lose everything, you become nothing. His chest became tight. His hands began to shake. The neighbors watched him quietly, expecting him to shout, cry, or curse his fate. And for a few seconds, Elias almost did. He almost let the storm outside become a storm inside him. But then he remembered the river. He remembered the leaf that did not fight the current. He remembered the cup that had been too full. He remembered the woodcutter, who owned little but served gratitude. He remembered the stones that became heavy only because he carried them too long. So Elias closed his eyes. He took one deep breath, then another. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" he asked, "What can I do now?" That one question changed everything. He picked up the broken wood. He separated what could be repaired from what could not. He cleaned the mud from the floor. He tied part of the roof with rope. He placed the broken tools in one corner and saved the ones that still worked. His neighbors saw his calmness. One brought extra wood, another brought rope, another brought food, another stayed to help repair the wall. By sunset, the house was still damaged, but it no longer looked hopeless. That night, Elias walked back to the old man. His clothes were dirty, his body was tired, his house was broken, but his eyes were calm. "I lost almost everything," Elias said softly, "but strangely, I did not lose myself." The old man looked at him with pride. "Now you understand." Elias lowered his head. "I thought peace of mind meant a life without problems." The old man shook his head. "No, Elias, peace of mind is not the absence of storms. It is the ability to remain yourself while the storm is passing." Then the old man picked up a wooden bowl and filled it with clear water. He took a handful of dirt from the ground and threw it into the bowl. The water immediately became muddy. The old man placed the bowl on the table and said, "Now make the water clear again." Elias tried to move it gently, but the dirt spread even more. He tried to touch the water with his fingers, but that only made it worse. The old man smiled. "Stop." Elias pulled back his hand. Then they waited. No movement, no force, no control. Slowly, the dirt began to settle at the bottom of the bowl. The water became clear again. The old man asked, "What changed?" Elias answered, "The dirt settled." The old man shook his head gently. "No, the water stopped being disturbed." Elias looked at the bowl more carefully. The old man continued, "Your mind is the same. Life will throw fear into it. People will throw hurtful words into it. Failure will throw pain into it. The past will throw regret into it. But most people make their minds darker because they keep stirring everything again and again." Elias listened without moving. They replay the same insult. They fight the same memory. They imagine the same disaster. They argue with every thought. They fear every emotion. Then they wonder why their mind never becomes peaceful. The old man placed the bowl in Elias's hands. Sometimes, the greatest solution is not to control your mind. It is to stop disturbing it. For a long time, Elias said nothing. Only the evening wind moved through the trees. And for the first time, he understood. Peace was not far away. Peace was what remained when he stopped feeding the noise. Months passed. Elias's life did not become perfect. He still worked hard. He still had difficult days. Sometimes he failed. Sometimes he felt sadness. Sometimes fear returned and stood quietly at the door of his mind. But something inside him had changed. Sadness no longer became hopelessness. Failure no longer became identity. Fear no longer became his master. And success no longer became something he needed in order to feel worthy. People in the village began to notice. Elias still lived in a small house. He still wore simple clothes. He still worked with his hands, but his face looked lighter. His voice became calmer. His eyes no longer looked like they were searching for something outside himself. One day, a young man came to him and asked, "How do you stay so peaceful?" Elias smiled. For a moment, he remembered the old traveler beside the well. Then he answered, "I stopped trying to control everything outside me and started taking responsibility for what happens inside me." Years later, when the old man became too weak to walk, Elias visited him one final time. The old man looked at him and whispered, "Tell me, Elias, what is peace of mind?" Elias sat beside him and thought for a moment. Then he said, "Peace of mind is not getting everything I want. It is knowing that I do not need everything to be at peace." The old man's eyes shined with joy. "You have learned the lesson," he said. A few days later, the old traveler quietly left this world. But his wisdom did not disappear. It lived in Elias. And whenever someone came to him searching for happiness, success, or peace, Elias never pointed them toward money, power, praise, or a perfect life. He pointed them back to their own heart, because that was where the journey had always begun. And that was where it would always end. The greatest prison in life is not made of stone. It is a mind that never stops chasing what it believes is missing. And the greatest freedom is not having more. It is needing less from the world to feel complete. Remember this. Your mind believes the questions you ask it, so ask better questions. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every fear deserves your obedience. Not every burden must be carried forever. Some pain becomes heavy only because you refuse to put it down. Some storms become stronger only because you invite them into your heart. You cannot control every event. You cannot control every person. You cannot stop every loss, every delay, every disappointment, or every difficult season. But you can choose what happens inside you. You can choose to breathe before reacting. You can choose gratitude before comparison. You can choose presence before worry. You can choose peace, not once, but every single day. So today, choose one burden you have carried for too long. Put it down, not because life is easy, but because your mind deserves rest. If this story helped you see your mind differently, share it with someone who needs peace today. And if you are ready to stop letting every storm enter your heart, comment these words: "I choose peace." Not for anyone else, for yourself. Because one day, when you look back, you may realize that peace was never waiting at the end of the road. It was waiting for you to stop running away from yourself.